I'm sitting here in a cozy nook on the northeast side of my home in the early morning, diffused light. I went through the Lion's Gate and have had such a journey, busy traveling with family, minor but intense car accident, and then being remote, separated from all the Wi-Fi and technology, just connecting with the land and with children, family, friends, and learning about how to connect with the earth and her medicine and ways she sustains us, making food and harvesting, and such a beautiful space. It's our third time visiting this place with my community of homeschooling families. And this time my husband came, and the gift of that was bringing back this invigorated energy to help me with my struggling garden. Realizing that we can't do this alone and how much work it is, and that really it takes a community, it takes many hands. So lots of family. When we were traveling earlier this month, we went to visit my sister and her twins, 5-year-old boy and girl, in LA. And so for the first time, we also got to explore that landscape and be inspired by those muses of creativity. And I had just learned how to make flower essences. And my sister had this beautiful lei tree in her backyard that was full bloom, and then dropping gifts a couple times while we were there, these beautiful scented frangipani flowers. And I offered them to Mother Maree. There was this statue, this ceramic that was handmade by her landlord, who had just kind of abandoned some of those creations he left back there when he rented the space out. There's a big kiln and some other sculptures of heads, but this beautiful statue was just tipped over among the weeds, and I stood it up and set up an altar for her and moved the little breakfast table and chairs over next to her under a palm. And that became my morning and evening nook. So here I am sitting in my morning nook. I had set a schedule for myself and kept to it to share. Initially, it was a schedule that was part of an apprenticeship that I had been inspired to outline and share just in a matter of, I think, a day and a half. I put up the information on my website. I and then continued to finesse and edit. But and even though it was in Mercury retrograde and I was doubting whether or not to share it, I just did it anyway. And it soon became clear that this apprenticeship that I titled Embody Your Medicine, and this website, Dhyana Healing, which I had set up earlier, was not only in service of others and sharing all that I have learned and continue to learn, but healing and sharing and embodying all that I have learned and continue to learn, and healing myself, and myself and my body, my own container, continuing to embody this medicine too. Because as we teach and talk and share and converse and dialogue and immerse in community, we also, as facilitators, as participators, as continual learners, and friendship engagers, we continue to grow. We continue to receive gifts that were unexpected, that we, when I share and I offer a gift, I receive so much in return in that offering. And so it's been kind of delightful to experience that shift in this particular case of sharing online and putting the pen to paper, so to speak, and organizing my my notes and the history of lessons I've learned, and really just soaking it in. It's really also the best of what I love about homeschooling, and relearning in new ways those years that I came up through, that my children are coming through now at age 8 and 11, which whew, can be really powerful medicine. And in the sense that re-experiencing, now I'm not talking about just education and what I learned in school, but the emotional content of my experiences as a child, as a sibling, as a child of a parent, and as I felt interacting with authority and oppression, and really stirring up the pot around that, and rage, and then suppression of that, and depression and implosion, and watching that in play out in my children, and seeing how beautiful it is for them not to implode, for them to speak their mind and assert their right and might. And then my teaching then becomes about being a holding space, a container for that, rather than an oppressor, either spanking it out of them or yelling it out of them, or suppressing it in any way. Still working on the yelling, honestly, and the triggers. It's a continual journey. In all this work I do, I'm drawn to healing not only major trauma, but or minor trauma. I won't quantify it, but also releasing all the conditioning and the things that I have just taken as that we all as a society, not only in this culture, but in also in a certain level, at a global level, this idea of how children are supposed to be and how they are supposed to learn and what adults are supposed to be defined as authorities and teachers, and that children don't have an intrinsic interest in learning. It's just absurd and not true. I'm digressing from what I intended to speak about. Actually, I didn't have any clear intention this time. I came on to share because it was time. But just to wrap up about the children, babies learn to walk. We don't teach them. And to run and climb and talk. They're motivated themselves, and we watch them be very frustrated in their failures. And yet, without, especially in infancy, in the toddler years, without getting, or in the early toddler years before the conditioning starts really early, because you can see them also get very frustrated to the point where they feel bad about themselves very easily, very young, or ashamed. But initially, and if we keep that channel open, there is no self, flagellation, beating up, judging about having failed. You stumble, fall, you keep trying, get up and you walk again until you're walking and running and climbing. So, and that's a metaphor for this life, this process of continually learning and expanding, and that there are so many conditional layers to shed. And I'm just thinking about a butterfly, and someone had gifted I had ordered this reading from a dear friend who I will share in the notes. Again, I think I've shared before, who channels and paints in light language, and one of the symbols that came through for me was a butterfly, and it just popped into my head again, because I've been thinking, at times how I'm in different stages of this life cycle, and it spirals around. Sometimes I feel like a butterfly. Sometimes I feel like in that chrysalis stage, and and sometimes I think I'm in one stage, but then I realize I'm in another. It kind of bounces around, because there is no timeline. We can be in different stages at the same time in different areas of our life or aspects of our self. And I also wanted to share that recently I came across a powerful and beautiful group called Turtle Tank, and they also in the class there's a free online class about life and work and ritual and joy, desire, anchoring in desire, which is so in alignment with all that I am doing with the unschooling, anchoring, just trusting that the children are anchored in their desire and are going to learn and grow. And so Turtle Tank in the presentation, they use some great visuals in their PowerPoint presentation talk, and one was in redefining and shaping and applying this life cycle of the butterfly to the path, the journey that they were illustrating in a beautiful way. And that even in the caterpillar stage, there's this constant transformation happening, shedding and shedding and shedding each time it grows. Really beautiful work. I highly recommend Turtle Tank. And I'm also coming to kind of the essence of what I was going to talk about, is this idea of going back to school. Just as a metaphor came to me the other day as well, that just shamelessly, putting aside any pride, keep learning, keep going back to school. Trust when, like a child, when you stumble on this path, and it doesn't even have to, stumble has its own connotations. It could be just that the road you took diverged because there was some medicine and teaching there, and then that you needed, and then you come back to school to, or maybe going back to school is that divergence. So this idea of going back to school, whether it's, taking a class, talking with a friend and asking questions about what they know that you don't, whether it's literally going back to school to take classes and expand your degree of knowledge in a different field or in the same field, or going to therapy, going to see working with a counselor, whatever it is, really knowing and discerning when it's time to go back to school and drop in. Such a gift, and there's no shame in seeking help. In fact, it's how we survive, it's how we thrive, even more importantly, even more relevant, right, to right now. We don't need to just keep surviving. We're safe, much safer than we've ever been in the long history and timeline, before the shift of patriarchy and conquest and colonization happened. There may have been pockets of time when things were peaceful and we were connected to the earth and living together in harmony with life. And that's what I want to come back to. That's what I'm working towards as an individual within myself, bringing all these warring parts into harmony. And as a reflection of society, doing that work on the outside in community, in family, it's happening on a parallel path, and they're affecting each other. So that brings me to another point that I wanted to talk about is my resistance to being seen as a self-preservation protection, and it's multi-layered, right? Part of it is kind of encoded in DNA to protect and conform, to hide and be invisible, to hide any unique individuality that will stand out and call attention to oneself, that might mark them for burning. Literally, we have these mechanisms as organisms to learn and grow and survive and pass that information on from generation to generation. And so that mechanism, that witch wound is real. And I mean, it can be a witch wound, whatever lineage we have descended from. There are those kinds of learnings and teachings, and that come from an older world that doesn't apply in the same way anymore, if at all, in some instances. So we need to change and shift and pass on new genetic DNA codes. So that's part of the work that I'm doing is shedding those, just centering, coming back to being seen. So another aspect of it that I resist is fear of failure, of judgment, of ridicule, of much more benign than being burned, but is also not a product of past ancestral trauma, more than sort of a culture that has been passed down in how we behave, but also very much a present reaction to this life of personally how being seen has given me attention I don't want, and also witnessing the kind of attention and projections and energy that ultimately gets processed and as a hollow bone and channel becomes much larger. So I need to prepare and keep preparing myself, and to accept, contain, filter, and purify and cleanse and release what comes my way and what might come my way. And I've seen it in people who are much more exposed and work on a much broader public scale. And honestly, it scares me to process that much. Um, but I just trust, and that I'm on the right path, that I open up as much as I'm able and willing to at the right time, and discerning when is the right time, and it continually coming back to investigate, well, is that just my fear holding me back from where I need to be, what I need to do, or is this something I need to listen to? And surely it's also at times a combination. Okay, I'm going to listen because there's a fear here holding me back. There's work to do here before I move forward. It's a rite of passage. And rituals need to happen, digging deeper, taking another spiral. So that's what happened this last month. I expanded, went through the Lionsgate, and went on this big journey that was about just physically being involved in my family and away from my nook here, that I couldn't, in one sense, make the time to do this work of sharing the medicine. And there was resistance then in that process to make the time. And there was a deep knowing and letting go of beating myself up about not meeting my own schedule, about shifting and being flexible in making that change and that choice. So there was a lot going on, and even coming to this today, it's been there've been, since I've been back and dealing with so many distractions and messages. The day I got back after the 2 different back-to-back trips we had, the next day, because my back was a little achy from a whiplash, and then sleeping on the earth and traveling in the car many hours, I wanted a bath, take a salt bath. And I forgot I was filling the bathtub, and I have an old bathtub that doesn't have a drain precautionary drain spout, whatever that is called. And I flooded my bathroom, my kitchen, and my basement. And then the next day, my daughter was doing the laundry, and turned out the hose was under the sink and not draining into the sink, the washing machine hose. So there was these messages coming through about water and emotions spilling through, and the house needing more attention. So as it does. And so more and more I'm going to be now not just spending more time with my family and working in the garden and making medicine, but tending to the house in deeper ways than we have been. We own this house. It's our first house we've owned. I grew up in an apartment in New York City, Manhattan. So gardening and home care are really a big learning curve for me. Oh, I wish I had the skills to like be able to build a house, and like I saw on this homestead we stayed at. Um, but I'm learning. There's so much I want to learn. I've wanted to learn all my life. So many things that I haven't chosen to dive into, but I choose to be a perpetual learner. And I choose to, you know, take off my masks as I am braver and braver to um, do so more and more, to be seen. And oh, interestingly, and I wish I had the book right in front of me, I've been reading many books. I tend to read many books at the same time and then dive into one and complete it and then come back to another. So last night I picked up one book and then another that I had been reading. One is Luminous Subjects by Sara Motta, and the other one is Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. And in each one, like the one paragraph I read was so deep and profound and relevant. And in Emergent Strategy, um, the page I left off at, and I find this interestingly, I've noticed this, that where I have left a book and then come back to it has been where I needed to deepen my journey and kind of go in a little and be ready to come back and receive that medicine and really take it in. So like I put books down when I get to a point that is just too intense for my psyche or that I know I need to just, intuitively drop in. So I pick up this book, Emergent Strategy, and I'm on a page that's titled Be Seen. And she goes into this whole really profoundly beautiful sharing about reaching out and connecting and being seen during a very difficult stage in her life. So beautiful. Really great books. Just recommending those too. So I don't have any particular specific medicine to share from any teachings I've received directly about a particular practice today. But in this talk about coming back from the portal that I went through, I come back with stepping through a new door, and it happens to be the new moon today. And there's so much going on in the world and within myself and in the stars and planets, and ultimately in this journey of feeling a little bit unsure and full of some self-doubt and feeling unworthy to maybe continue a specific thing. I really have come back to this opening and being in perfect harmony with and trust with the process and with the timing and with the sharing even, and opening a new door, shedding another layer. And it's happening even as I give this talk. Trusting the flow and embodying the experience. So with that, with those words, embodiment, and back to school, I have two things to share as well. I have just updated this past week my services to share a back to school promo that is a really affordable, accessible offering that can be received as a one-time only one-on-one session, or set up as a bulk 5 session deeper dive, or project work experience on unraveling some knots or whatever's going on. Just trusting that if you open the door and pull at that thread, that it will unravel and you will survive and you will grow. And the other offering is for referrals. So a more tighter knit community service to friends and friends of friends and local community members who need support with something, or are just beginning to look under underneath the layers that are conscious. So yes, I offer those in service, in answer to the question, how may I be of service? I just keep listening. And I'm also going to be putting together some local experiences, in-person group experiences. One will be for women, adults, and one will be for a more playful family experience. Both will be about embodiment, movement, sound, healing, trusting, being present in joy, in joyful liberation. And I want to share also, I'll put all this in the notes. And when I have those dates set for the classes, I'll also add those to this video note. I want to share a project close to my heart that I've been working on, also evolving, called Pathways to Sustain Joyful Liberation. And this is a family retreat and unconference, or curated unconference conference for Black, Indigenous people of color and their friends and family who are on the path of or interested in self-directed learning and unschooling and returning to the earth and walking in a good way in right relationship to life and each other, the planet, the four-leggeds, two-leggeds, rock people, all of it, life. So check that out, bit.ly/joyful liberation. It's an ongoing labor of love to do this work, to evolve from within, to evolve in relationship to other and myself and community, family. And yeah, it is my mission to do the right thing and yeah, live my best life and make the world a better place. Yeah, make the best of this mess. This sometimes beautiful mess, sometimes scary mess, sometimes despairing mess, sometimes uplifting, ecstatic, beautiful mess. Beautiful mess. Now that is a phrase I learned from my dear friend who put together a workshop and called it that, and I love it so much, as I love her. I love you. All right. And by the way, that friend is a partner in our Spanda Center work organization, sanctuary for the pulse of life. So I'll add that in the show notes too. She does beautiful work. Jacqueline Rolandelli and my other partner, Carol Fiorito Borowski, is on sabbatical training to be a midwife and continuing her work with placenta encapsulation and postpartum birth support. And my dear husband, who is also part of Spanda Center, is doing beautiful, deep, playful, joyful work as well with the Dungeons and Dragons ministry. So, with the family and with adults and with children. Yeah, read all about that too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing me being seen here in another layer of my raw vulnerability. And I love you and love yourself. Okay. Ciao for now. Ashe.